Welcome along to NewFinance. I'm Eddie, the founder. Melis, our innovation facilitator. She's designed a workshop today. Just a bit about the Insurance Disruptive series. We've done 5 months where we've examined technologies that disrupt insurance, and today we're going to answer the question, how do you actually build a real business model around that? So we've done lots of theoretical sort of imagining, creation, and so on. Well, today we're going to look at that business model and see if it's real, if you can actually turn this into something that's profitable and sustainable. We're going to split out to Melis' workshop bit in a minute, but essentially we're going to map the audience, then we're going to go through the workshop, obviously. We'll do a learning and reflection session at the end. We'll close by about 5. Okay, Melis, shall I hand over to you? I've got the Prezi set up here.
Yeah. All right, so what is it really needed that we do as a next step after we've looked at all of these different technologies and we've examined how they potentially could change insurance? So it's hacking a business. So exactly the same way developers take ideas and transform them into prototypes to show how an application could work. Actually, what we're going to do today is get the closest to hacking a business and showing how a different way of organizing a business could work. I've selected a methodology to use to do that, so we're going to do a little bit of learning as well. But first, let me tell you what the day is going to look like. So we'll start with a few introductions as to how we talk about a business model, what a business model means, and what are the elements that make it work. Then we will compile the current business model of the insurance industry. What does it actually look like? What are its mechanics? And we'll examine how strong these mechanics are. Where are the weak links? Where are the strong links? The next step is that I will introduce you to a number of patterns, which are types of new business models that have emerged the last 20 years or so, which have proven to be very effective in different ways, but which have changed dramatically how businesses function. And using these patterns, we will then examine the disruptions we've been talking about, so the technologies that are out there, and we will look at, do they disrupt parts of the business model or not really, from an economics point of view? How do they disrupt them? And how do you balance the rest of the business model to actually deal with these disruptions? And finally, if you have the appetite for it, we will actually test some of these models with numbers. So I have a tool which will allow us to actually put together some figures and run them in the future and see, does this make sense? How much sense does it make? And so forth. So this is what the day is going to look like. So far, so good? Yeah. So it's going to be very much of a workshop. I will do probably just 2 short presentations of about half an hour simply to get the terminology on the table. And the rest of it is us thinking together. I've done a fair amount of thinking myself around this, and I find it actually a very interesting exercise to play around with the elements and see how it works. To my knowledge, nobody yet has done anything as systematic in this field as what we're doing here. So it's a validation of saying, okay, you have all these disruptions, great, but do they really matter? So this is exactly the point about disruptive technologies. They're fantastic, they are loved by geeks, they're adopted by some customers and by early adopters, but they do not always disrupt the business. And they don't always disrupt the business because they don't change the economics of that business. This is why we have this session. These are our objectives. That's all we have to accomplish by the end of the day. And this is the methodology. The methodology is called business model generation. Does anybody know this methodology in the room? Great, so you're going to be helping on the way. So it's a methodology that has been developed about 10 years ago or so. It's based on solid research. It's been used a lot in the field, in different types of industries and so forth. It started off as an academic piece of research developed by a Swiss and a French person who then went out and collected information from all sorts of business people and ran more than 70 workshops with 400 people around the world to create a way to describe a business which is simple but at the same time gives you the possibility to examine whether this business functions or not. It's been used in all sorts of different places, even in things like this. So even the World Cup has their own business model. It's a great way of putting on a single piece of paper everything that describes a model, everything that describes a business, how that business functions, but also to communicate to people about it, and to change elements to see their interrelationships. Nine elements, that's all there is to it. I'm going to go through them one by one, and if you guys want to add to my very brief explanations, please feel free. So the whole thing starts on the right-hand side with the thing on the furthest there, which is the customer. The customer is the person you serve. Very easy, but more than that, we're talking in business models about customer segments. And here it's important to clarify what segments means in this particular methodology. A segment is a segment only if you're providing a different value to that segment or if you're serving them in a different way. If you're providing the same thing as anybody else to them, that is not a segment. You may call it a segment internally, but it is not in this methodology. So, example, Amazon is probably one of the best known, very, very dramatic examples of different segments. They have one segment of customers, which is you and me, buying stuff online from them. And they have another segment of customers, which is totally different, which is corporate clients who buy computing services from them. Two totally different value propositions delivered in very different way, serving two very different groups. That's what is called a segment. In the customers, we distinguish between several different types of segments. And I'll give you the two extremes. On one side, mass market, so you serve anyone. On the other end of the extreme, niche. You serve very, very small group. And which type of segment you have drives a lot how the mechanics of the rest of the model works. Smack in the middle is the second most important thing, which is your value proposition, which is what do you do to serve that customer? And it is what they perceive as the value, not what you say is your value. And there is a distinction. The value proposition generally solves a problem of the customer, but it also includes a number of softer characteristics. Ease of use, accessibility, it may include even some principles and ethics and so forth. So customers make their choices based on these characteristics. This is where you need to think from really their point of view of what it is that you're doing that is serving some of their needs that is unique. Most of the time, the differentiation that happens in the value proposition is based on the softer characteristics. So far, I'm doing fine. Anybody wants to add anything? No? Good so far. Then, still on the right-hand side, we have two blocks that are basically allowing us to transport our value from where we produce it to our customer, deliver it to them. And those are the relationships we build, the customer relationships, and the delivery channels. The customer relationships on top is basically the links you develop with your customers and the intelligence you have about them. Again, a number of different levels of relationship exist, which correspond to different types of business models. I'll give you again the extremes. One is no relationships at all, which corresponds to typically mass market segments. The other extreme is very, very close relationships, some of the type you have in very, very good hotels where everybody knows you by name. And others, which are some of the new emerging actually relationships, have to do with co-creation. So involving your customer to such an extent that they become part of your business model. So the relationship goes to a totally different level. It's not just knowing about your customer, it's not just serving them, but actually making them part of your business. An example, the gaming industry is probably one of the best of these. There's a lot of gaming platforms that transform the gamers into producers. They're part of the people who develop the value proposition. Most of the development in the user experience area nowadays actually is involving this type of engagement with the customer. So a lot of the co-creation that happens that different industries are engaging in, on smaller scale usually, is evolving their relationships. It's an expensive block. Keep it in mind. The delivery channels is basically how you get your product in all of its different stages to the customer. And that will involve online channels, offline channels, face-to-face, personal contact, and so forth, and all the stages, touch points that you have with your customer. From the moment they hear about you, through your engagement, all the way till you retire your relationship. So advertisement is an interesting point because in most models, advertisement actually appears as a second segment which supports the initial segment of the, so it uses the current segment of the business model, customer segment, as a community, and it creates revenue. So it's actually a model we will look at later, which is called multi-sided platform, where you have a dependency between two different customer segments. One which is paying, and the other one which is consuming value but not paying necessarily for it. So the advertisement is generally not a channel for delivering per se when it's an online platform. When you use it as a marketing means, yes. So depending on from which point of view you look at it. You wanted to add something?
We use this an awful lot. We use this an awful lot, and insurance is a very heavily intermediated business. So one of the things that we often find you end up having to do is sometimes look at dividing that value proposition down the middle and say value prop to the broker or intermediary and value proposition to the end customer. Because sometimes it's not quite a two-sided model, yeah, but it feels a little bit like it, that you're pitching to two customers, essentially.
Yeah, so I would actually treat this as nearly as a different segment, but a segment which appears in two places. It appears here as a customer, but at the same time it appears here as a partner. And this is something that happens quite often in business models, is that elements can appear in several places. So it's a partner to whom you're delivering a value that they as well use to create a value to deliver to another customer. So there's this kind of interesting dependencies that come, and that's exactly where we're going to start seeing some of the new patterns of business models coming in and changing some of these elements. Absolutely. So this basically was the right-hand side of the model. Now, the other side is everything that we have to do in order to produce the value. And there are three elements that are important, which is the key activities we need to perform in order to produce the value. So not all of your activities, but those that actually are absolutely key to get that value out. The key resources you need to do that: human, technical, knowledge, etc., platforms, and the partners. A note on the partnerships as well. This is a thing which has several layers as well, similar to the relationships, from simple supplier relationship type of partner through joint ventures to models where the partner actually is integrated in the model and is appearing as a customer or as a producer of value. So partners affect a lot of the other elements. Partners can appear here, here, a lot here, and even there. So they are a way to deliver some of these things, and the level at which you engage with them would change the way the model works. They will affect as well to a big extent some of your costs and some of the mechanics around your revenues. So this is where one of the things that is not often looked at in traditional business models is models where partners are actually part of the business and you're looking at revenue sharing, not at paying a supplier. The bottom of the equation is all that has to do with money, what comes in and what goes out. In the cost structures, basically everything that generates cost goes there. We will look at some of the interesting points to watch for there when we look at the mechanics, but that's all you need to know at this moment. For the revenue, you're talking about all types of revenue, so both fixed and recurring, and the balance of this is going to be very important for the business model as well. And this is all there is to it. So I'm just going to take two examples to show you what a business model may look like. So this is the Lego Design Factory. So it's a particular type of business line for Lego. It's not just anything. And what it is it allows customers to develop their own designs, upload them, and then Lego produces their pieces that are part of these designs, and you have your own Lego set. As on top of that, what you can do is load your designs for others to use them, so you create effectively new Lego pieces all the time. So they use the customers here as a very integral part of the business model. And there are several things that happen with this thing. One is that you're able to produce very niche products very inexpensively. So single issue products totally inexpensively. You're able to produce new products without investing in product development because somebody else does it for you. And on top of that, they charge a premium price for it because it's your own Lego set. Why wouldn't you pay for it? So they are targeting a specific type of group of people. It's a very clever business model, right? So this thing we will see later is called a multi-sided platform on one side, but at the same time it's a business model which is very well known as the long tail. And this is what the business model looks like once it's filled. So this one is a multi-sided type of platform where you have two different segments, one which produces value and one which consumes value. So the blue and the green simply separate the two different segments and the flows that happen. Yeah. So one produces the value, the other one consumes the value, and the organization whose business model this is simply acts as a platform. An example of this is something like the iTunes platform. So, or any kind of app store or marketplace will have this type of business model. Interdependencies. That's the key for it. And then just the last one, Kiva. Similarly, you have two different segments that interact. One which gives money for another one to consume. And the whole thing the business does is provide a platform where those two different segments can meet. This is what we have to do now, looking at the insurance industry. So our first task right now is to spend some time thinking about the insurance industry and compiling the business model of it. You can pick a particular field if you prefer, but the goal is really to go through what are the key segments that are served, how are they served, what is the value proposition, what are the channels we use, how close relationships do we build with these, what are the mechanics of the money coming in and going out, and how we produce this.
Can we shuffle tables before we do that?
Yes, we will. So first of all, the guys at the small table need to come here because we need more surface. And I see there's a lot of red dots.